if you are an author, I want to show you how you can use AI to really level up your writing game. Now, to be fair, I'm not a published author. I've written exactly one 80,000 word manuscript, but I think what I show you here, you will be able to use it to make your writing better, to make your writing experience better. We've seen the, I can help you write a novel in 90 days kind of stuff. This isn't that. This is legitimately using an existing tool to ramp up your game. All right, so here's what we're going to do. As you can guess by the screen that we're looking up right here, over here, we're going to talk about using Claude.AI. Now, I have subscriptions to a number of AI tools. In this particular case, it turns out that Claude was the one that can solve this problem for me. What I'm going to do, so I'll give you the spoiler up front so you can decide if you want to watch anymore. I am going to upload my novel to Claude, and I'm going to interrogate Claude. I'm going to ask it questions about my novel. And I already did a TikTok video, Kryptonite US on TikTok, join me there. But that was a fairly short one. I'm going to do a little bit more of an in-depth to really give you a feel for how much AI can help you if you're an aspiring novelist or an existing novelist, okay? So in this particular case, this is a thriller story, okay? So it's a modern times thriller. I wrote this in 1999, all right? I literally finished it December 31st, midnight, 1999. And I'm revisiting now after 25 years to see, maybe is it worth publishing or doing something with? But I've forgotten so much of it. So here's what we're going to do. First, I've gone to Claude.AI. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and upload my novel to it. So click on the paperclip, and I have it as a Word document. So I'm uploading this. Now here's the catch that some people don't quite realize is that many of the AIs have limitations on how many pages that they can actually work with. In this particular case, Claude can handle an 80,000 word novel, okay? And if you're an aspiring author, you probably know that 80,000 words is a fairly typical novel size, okay? On the beginner side, okay, 80,000 words. All right, so Claude now has my novel. So let's talk about what we're gonna query about it. First off, I have an issue in my story where the main character is trying to find his wife. His wife has been abducted, and he's captured someone who knows where she is, and he's not giving up her location. In fact, he tortures this person eventually. He's a lawyer, and he ends up going down a dark path and torturing this person to find out where is his wife. I need to know that because I don't remember if she was there for days or weeks, and I need to adjust the story based on her situation. Is it possible that she could have survived where she was at with no food, no water? So the first question that we're going to go ahead and ask this, she's in a grease pit. If you know what a grease pit is, it's an area in a garage underneath the car where you can get to the car easily without putting it on jacks. They live in a nice size house, and their house has a grease pit in it, just for context. So in the attached story, so first off, I gave context. I'm telling it to pay attention to the story. If you don't do this and you upload a document, it'll go outside of your attachment and ask this question of other places. When I just asked the question, it started searching Netflix. It started searching other places for a character named Dana to answer this. No. In the attached story, how many days is Dana missing before Paul, her husband, finds her in the grease pit? Okay? So it's going to go ahead and evaluate this. I have tried this with other ones that couldn't process the whole novel, and unfortunately they're processing a third to a half of the novel, and guess what? She's not rescued in that time period, so they couldn't answer the question because they could not read enough of the novel to get it. All right, so here we go. Claude's being a little slow today. I did receive a warning about that. So it's going through here, and I did ask it to be in a fairly longer sentence mode. I forgot what it's called. All right, so it's going to give me this explanatory mode. There we go. So going through here, it's giving me a little bit of context. It's also reminding me about some of the things that had happened, kind of summarizing it. And then when we get here, based on all these references, right here, Dana appears to have been missing for approximately 3 days before Paul finds her. Okay? And then, interesting, this timeline aligns with both the medical implications of her condition. Okay? If I did her condition correctly, that was an accident. Okay? So this is interesting. You may not have a problem like this. You might have other problems with your story or other questions. So let's go ahead and do this. So first off, I perceive that I'm a good storyteller, but a crap author, okay? Think J.K. Rowling. All right, so, though obviously not as good at either as she is. All right, so my question here is, how does Paul's character grow in the story? It's interesting to find out what a third party thinks of it without having to have them proofread it. Claude obviously does it much faster. And here it actually gives a really good breakdown. Of the character and the character's growth in the story. All right. At the start, Paul embodies ideals of the justice system, and it talks about basically his breakdown where he violates his ethics and just goes down a dark path. I'm not going to go into it. You don't care about my story. But the point is, it answered that question. Okay, so now, where I came up with the story is a side issue. But one of the purposes of the story is there is torture in it, and it's fairly graphic torture. Okay? So I'm like, what is the worst thing Paul does to his prisoner? All right. So now I'm asking subjective questions. All right. And man, so I've done this a number of times across a number of AIs, and they all quote the same general area of the story. Okay. They actually talk about the worst thing that he does. And many of them will call out and say, he does kill the guy, but the worst thing he does is this other part over here. And I think that is fantastic. And what is great is the way it breaks this down. What makes this act specifically brutal is its multiple layers of suffering. The physical pain of having a screw penetrating your skull, okay, that was to screw his head into a board so he couldn't move his head and look away. The physical trauma of being forced to watch yourself, he was looking in a mirror. The inability to look away or find mental escape, and the deliberate attempt to inflict permanent psychological damage beyond death. Okay, again, you don't care about my story, but I'm trying to show you what this has said about the story. Interesting. Still maybe not the most interesting stuff. Let's take a look at some other things. So let's get outside of the content of the story for the story's sake. I asked it, can you guess as to the demographics of who wrote this? You know, depending on what you're writing, you might try to be representing as something other than yourself. And as this is processing, I will tell you what it has previously said. It pretty much guesses my demographics. It said 35 to 50-year-old male. I was 35 when I wrote this. And it goes through some other things. It identifies, interestingly, it identifies my generation. It says Gen X because of some MTV references. Keep in mind, I wrote this at the end of the 20th century, so MTV was more relevant back then, okay? Yeah. That'll come up a little bit later. Gender, likely male. Got my age correct. Education background. In this, it got it wrong. It says education background, likely college-educated professional based on I failed out of college, okay? But I'd like to think I'm educated anyway. Being neurodivergent, of course, I study things that fascinate me. Okay, but in general, it got me that. Familiar with upper middle class lifestyles. Understanding of professional workplace dynamics, complex sentence structure, and sophisticated vocabulary, etc. Really cool. Neat to get that feedback, right? Location, likely American West mountain region. Okay, so this is cool. And this is kind of a good double check. But here's the thing. The writing also suggests someone with some creative writing experience, but perhaps not extensive professional publication history. True that. Based on the ambitious plot structure combined with occasional technical issues in pacing and exposition. That's going to come in later because now we're looking at this to improve my writing. Again, these are educated guesses based on textual analysis. So one of the previous queries I did looked very similar, but it did give me one other part that I think is definitely worth mentioning, okay? It said in the previous one, the writing suggests someone with professional experience, but perhaps not expensive creative writing training, just like this. There are sophisticated plot elements and technical details, but also some rough edges in the prose style. Okay, fantastic. So the next question I have is based on that particular response, all right? And again, if you're an author, this is the kind of stuff you want. Can you give me examples of the rough edges of the prose style? Let's see where I can improve this, okay? And so it does. It searches through here. And again, so if you don't know, when you are doing this, it understands within a single chat you're establishing context. So I don't need to say, in the attached story, can you give me examples? No, it has the context, the attached story. So all these questions build on each other. Okay, and so let's go through this. I'm going to talk about a couple so you can see what it's doing. Inconsistent point of view. The story sometimes shifts awkwardly between perspectives. Okay, and then it gives examples. Overuse of bracketed internal thoughts. Autism for the win. I'm just going to leave that there. I'll read it. I don't know if I'll change that, but it's better than me, so I'll probably take it under consideration. Awkward exposition. Sometimes information is delivered through unnaturally formal dialogue, like, "You're in for a treat." And there's some other examples. Okay. And I knew I was doing this, telling the story through the characters instead of showing. Again, 25 years ago, this is a common newbie mistake. Uneven pacing. Okay, sometimes lingers on minor details while rushing through major plot points. Overuse of italics and emphasis. The text frequently uses underlining, italics, and bracketed thoughts. Okay, good. Repetitive description. Certain phrases and ideas get repeated more than necessary. Multiple references to Paul being intense. Excellent. Tonal shifts. The story sometimes struggles to balance its darker elements with lighter moments. Okay, so there we go. And again, examples. This is what I need to make this a good book. Okay. These rough edges suggest a writer with strong creative instincts who might benefit from more experience with technical aspects of prose craft. The core story is compelling, but the execution could be more polished through techniques like, and it's giving them, read, pause, and read if you like. Actually, I hadn't seen this before. Would you like me to elaborate on any of these points or provide additional examples? How great is that? That you can get instant feedback on this instead of handing this to a couple of friends who, may or may not give you that honest response up front. Okay, I'm going to come back to this. I'm actually following a series of questions from what I had done before. Last night, I kept waking up my wife. Okay, so here's something. So we're going to come back to some of these. I wanted more information. Okay, so the next one is, who are the main characters in the story? I know who they are, but actually since it's been 25 years, I didn't remember all of them. It's kind of good to get the names straight, but it's good to get an external perspective on who the characters are, what's going on. What I liked about this is this gives you not just a list of characters, but it's giving you things about their background, things about their growth in it, some key points of what's going on. Okay, Dana developing a darker perspective on justice that eventually leads her to embrace vigilantism alongside of Paul. Okay, the bad guy, Donnie Voven. Okay, Jean, Brandy, who is another victim of the rapist, the guy who took the main character's wife, etc. And then here, it gives you a little bit of additional feedback. What makes these characters particularly interesting is how they all undergo significant changes through their interactions with each other. The story explores how trauma and revenge can transform not just the direct victim, but everyone in their orbit. I'd like to think that that was intentional. I was just telling a story. Okay, but still, that kind of seemed complimentary from a machine. Okay, so HAL 9000 or Skynet kind of likes it. Let's ask it a few more questions. How about this? Can you rate the entertainment value of this story? I really didn't know what I was going to get with this, and I was pleasantly surprised. Now, is it accurate? It's not a person. I don't know what it was trained on, so how's determining this? But I thought that this was fantastic. All right, so it comes through, and it does. Let me analyze entertainment value of the story, examining key aspects. Pacing and plot. The story maintains strong forward momentum through its thriller style plot, and it gives some breakdowns. Character engagement. The relationship between Paul and Dana provides an emotional core. Tension and suspense. Okay, the story effectively builds and maintains suspense throughout with several techniques. All right. Moral complexity, writing style, gore and violence. Overall entertainment rating, 7.5 out of 10. Okay, the story succeeds as an engaging thriller with enough psychological depth to elevate it above pure pulp. While it could benefit from more polished prose and perhaps a lighter touch with the violence, not going to happen, it delivers a compelling narrative that keeps... Here's what's interesting. When I did this the previous time, it actually gave the something out of 10 scores for each one of these plots, not the gore and violence, but writing style, moral complexity, tension. It gave me like an 80 on pacing and plot development. It gave me an 8 on character development. It actually gave me 7s, 8s, and 9s on everything. Writing style, not writing style, but we'll say writing competence, it gave me a 6. And I think that plays out here, and that was very, very valuable. It still gave me an overall entertainment rating of 7.5. So again, very good. I've got 3 more here for those who are still here. Okay. Again, another critical one for an author. Are there any glaring inconsistencies in the story? I had a lot of concerns about them. In all honesty, the inconsistencies I was thinking about here were things like, I know at one point I caught that I described Paul's eyes as being different colors. I'd given him different heights. I'd changed his hair color. And I'm going to talk in a different video about how I fixed that. But in this particular case, it's talking plot points. Okay, so just going through, I identify at one point that one person calls another person to alert them that Dana is missing. And this is like, how does that person know? Because this, and this. Okay. There's also some confusion around the vehicles and timing in the story's climax. I probably swap who is in what vehicle. Makes sense. Okay. I'm not a detail guy. Okay. The handling of Dana's recovery presents another inconsistency. She goes from being severely injured, dehydrated, and traumatized to being able to sneak out of the hospital and visit Donnie in a remarkably short time. I actually have a book called Body Trauma. It's a guide for authors and how certain things really impact a character. If you get shot in the stomach, how long will it take for you to die? Takes a while, okay? A lot of things like that. So I actually use the guidelines from that book to determine her recoverability. But this is still good feedback, okay? And again, it's fiction, all right? Check elements of your brain at the door. So these things, all right, are there any glaring inconsistencies? It does say these inconsistencies don't severely impact the overall story, but they do suggest the work might benefit from another revision pass. 100%. 100%, okay? So along those lines, I asked this final question. I said there's 3, but I'm going to skip one, okay? This final question, I wrote this and completed the draft, like I said, in 1999. I don't want it to read like a book then. I want it to feel current. And that's going to take some significant rewriting. So what changes would be made to the story to make it feel more 21st century? And I absolutely love this. It's a fairly long list, but I feel it's very doable. I feel I can accomplish this. And most of the changes are now addressing technologies that I think are going to be more permanent nowadays, like mobile phones, as opposed to talking about landlines and some of the story around whether people can get to a phone or not. Though I do, different story. So we do come through here. Let's walk through how the story could be updated for a more contemporary setting, considering both technological and social changes. So technology updates goes through a number of these, okay? Talks about leveraging social media. Some of the comments might be through text message threads, etc. And it identifies that we could do that. Like there's a part when Paul is out of phone range. He does have a mobile phone, even in 1999. But it talks about how, when he would come into range, I might see the thread of the text messages pop up. So, okay, that's great. Security cameras and Ring doorbells. They might complicate Donnie's activities. Absolutely. And I can think of how that would play in other things. Social media's role in spreading news about the highway hunter, the bad guy. Electronic media records, modern car features like GPS traffic. Social and cultural updates. This actually talks a little bit about the Me Too movement and how that would elevate a story like this, if it was real, the news around a serial rapist, okay? Talks about the treatment of sexual assault and trauma would likely need to acknowledge modern understanding of these issues. Okay, 100%, all for it. Professional environment talks about some of the changes and updates that need to happen in the legal and medical aspects. Character modernization, telling me where I was writing maybe to some older stuff. Setting details, the MTV references, out of here. However, it's worth noting that the core psychological elements of the story, revenge, justice, moral compromise, remain timeless and wouldn't need significant updating. The challenge would be preserving the story's tension while acknowledging how modern technology might affect the plot mechanism. Would you like me to elaborate on it? This is fantastic. So this was the whole thing, all right? I'm going to be diving into this. I've already probably asked too many questions for the lay person who's reading that, but if you're an author, I'm hoping you saw something in here where you are thinking, I would really like to upload my story to something like this and start querying it. It's going to struggle. I think at this point in time, my 80,000 words is pushing the limit of how many, they're called tokens, how many tokens this can work with. So that is a limitation. That limitation is going to be dissipating over the course of the next 3 to 6 months. Okay, so right now we're at the beginning of February in 2025. So those things will be getting better with your stories. I would encourage you, if you're an author, you owe yourself to go ahead and pay for something like Claude. That seemed like a good starting place. And to go ahead and do this. I hope this was valuable to you. I'm going to do a few more videos. My focus is neurodivergence and cybersecurity and technology. This AI stuff is something I'm going to go into, and a little bit of author stuff because I have a few friends who are authors, and I think that this is a valuable tool in general. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much. Give me a like and a follow.